joining us. This is a City of Hardeeville City Council workshop, 205 Main Street, Hardeeville, South Carolina, Wednesday, June 26th at 11 a.m. This is a workshop, so the rules of order are relaxed, meaning just jump in when you want, except please make sure that your speaker has completed and yielded his time on the floor, or her.
Remember that now.
Remember that.
Just Abe.
Don't. Oh, we started early today. Okay, having said that, Mike, take us away.
Very good. Well, we have two projects I think the council is very interested in. One is, this of the old city hall. So, I've been accused in the past of stealing people's thunder. So I am not going to do that on either one of these. So I'm gonna let these two fine folks, Ms. Josie and Mr. Davis. Go ahead, Ms. Josie.
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to walk you through what I had prepared previously on Old City Hall to try and refresh everyone's memory. The location of it, if you remember, is at the corner of Martin and Main Street. And formerly, we've had 4 different tenants in this building. The front was our Chamber of Commerce. On the side, we've had our media team, and then the Jasper County Auditor and Treasurer's Office, and then our Low Country Legal folks were in the back. This is the former floor plan of which shows relative square footage for those tenants and how it was broken out. And then some of our challenges that led us to where we are today with rodent infestation, mold and air quality, MEP and structural concerns. And so at our last workshop or meeting, we decided that we needed to do some exploration. So our exploration, these photos are as of June 3rd. You can see the demo work that was performed to eradicate the infestation. And of course, our public works team, John Brown, want a special shout out to him and his folks for saving the city $20,000 in demo. They did an amazing job, and it was hard fought work. This was days and days of them going in there and ripping out everything to try and find where we were having some building envelope problems, of which we believe we have found those. Maybe not all of them, but we are in a better position now to understand our problems. So, leads me to today, where we're going to discuss 3 options. Option number 1 is a very low budget renovation option, of which keeps the building intact as is. And you can see at 2,600 square feet, the approximate construction cost of about $520 to $585 to just get the building usable. And when I say usable, it's bringing it up to code and obviously all new walls, flooring, ceiling, windows, doors, and exterior paint only. So option number 2 is if we want to do something that adds more square footage, because as you know from our space needs assessment, the city is out of space, and we are recommending that we do add a second story to this building, especially given its location so close to our municipal hub. We were showing this option that would keep the first floor intact. And when I say first floor, it's really the shell of the building, given what you've seen in our demo pictures, and then adding that second floor to get us the additional square footage. However, option 3 shows if we demo the existing building and we rebuild with a more intentional design, something that would anchor that corner lot that, helps tie in our municipal hub design ideas with our Memorial Park and with our Fire Station 81. I want to hone in primarily on the costs per square foot. So why is this the most expensive option? It's because there's more risk. We have assumptions we have to make. There are structural concerns with our existing foundation. You don't know until you start what that's going to look like. And we have not had a lot of contractors excited to start that type of a project. It's always easier, less risk, and less assumptions when you're starting new. You're getting a complete design package, your soils testing, your foundation, everything is going to be new. So if you're reusing, I just want you to know that that cost goes up. This next slide gets a little bit more in detail about some of those design restrictions. This particular design, there's only so much you can do with it if you're keeping the first floor. Your third option with a new building, you're getting better construction, a better lifespan, a more intentional design, a more dramatic anchor building for that corner lot, something that absolutely complements the Memorial Park. I have our architect here who put these renderings together, which, as you know, is a very conceptual part of what we're doing. This is not a building that we're saying we want or have to have. It was just an idea. So I can have our architect speak more about that in a few minutes. But option number 3, because you have 0 assumptions, it's intentional. That is the low risk option, in my opinion. Option number 1, if we want to talk more about that Band-Aid fix and what that number included, just know that there's no landscape, no civil work, parking will still be a problem, and we're limiting the number of tenants that we can put in that building. So I'm going to go to the next slide. We talked briefly about adding a museum to this space, which I want to bring to your attention that when you do that, you are adding, again, more cost to the project because we have criteria that we have to meet to allow for that museum. You have to add fire sprinklers, which bumps the cost up another $80,000. There's occupancy restrictions. You have restroom requirements versus if we were to call this more of a display of memorabilia and moving towards that display of memorabilia, you have less expenses to staff it. There's minimal cost for the installation. And then we could potentially couple that with our Chamber of Commerce lobby space. I want to talk a little about the timeline. We vacated the building April 30th. Public Works went in there May 1st and started their demo. And then the exploration phase began. We did determine that the building is salvageable. It's not in good condition, but it is possible to salvage. It's expensive and not recommended. And Cord Atkins was brought in on June the 3rd to kick off these concept drawings and provide these cost estimates for us. So those cost estimates that I've shown you are provided via a construction company. And then we're here today on the 26th. So we're asking for direction, and our recommendation is to go with a new building. It provides what we need for the growth that we're experiencing. It's a prominent corner lot, which warrants, in most of our opinions, a statement building. It would bring a lot of attention to what we're doing down at the hub. And then we're asking just invest in long-term solutions. The new building will also encourage developers in that area to invest. And I'm going to emphasize again that the city needs space. So a two-story building is needed. And then, of course, with a new building, we have a better opportunity to complement what we're designing for the park. So I'm going to bring Annette over for any questions that you may have, or if you'd like to just open discussion on construction methods, we're here to talk about that.
Anybody have any thoughts?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. This building, ADA compliant?
Absolutely. Everything that we would do, whether it's option 1, 2, or 3, would be brought into compliance.
Will it have an elevator?
It would have to have an elevator, anything above 1 story, yeah.
The design that I'm seeing here, is it possible to build it for your estimated?
That is, yes, yeah.
Okay. Parking is still gonna be an issue?
Parking would be a consideration during this new design, so we would have to marry what we're doing with the municipal hub and the veterans, well, it's now the Memorial Park. All of those new parking spaces would be calced in for this new building, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have an idea to throw out to everybody. Think about this. First of all, from a design concept, see if you could implement the current building's design into it. And since it's such a prominent place and can tie in and solve a little bit of the parking situation, make it a police headquarters. And still use, now, the negative to this idea is now you're splitting your police services in two buildings. However, since they're so close together and there's parking there, you don't have, you'd have to ask the chief the best way to segment the two purposes. But you could expand the space, the individual spaces in the old building, give each officer more office space, and then use the building here. And then that way, not only are you creating a centerpiece with the concept of this facade and Old City Hall's facade, but you are also, we're not kicking the police department's needs down the road. So, I would want to see a different design that fits into that concept. But with 7,000 square feet and the square footage we've expanded to right down the street, so I want to ask the chief, if this was a amenable idea to everybody, can you envision, without harming the overall services, a way to implement two buildings that are relative proximity? In concept, think of it as the same way the fire headquarters is right across the street from the main fire station. You, off the top of your head, and I know I'm throwing this at you cold, but you're good on your feet. Is there a way to split the department in two different buildings without diminishing the efficiency?
Well, there's always a way, yes, sir. We could make it work if that's what we need to do. Because we've made what we've got work. So we can always do that, yes, sir.
I find this is a way, it's a centerpiece building. It's a way, because we spend all this money on a building, we still haven't, well, we'd have to decide who goes in there, but is this the new city hall? But
No.
we still haven't, faced the issue of the police department needs. And that's probably, based on our general goals, probably one of the departments, if not the department, that's gonna grow in number of people over the coming years. And this is a way, because if you do this, now you still haven't solved the police department. And this is a way to keep them together. I don't know, that's the idea I had.
Mayor, if I can also add, the biggest problem we have down in that area is parking. When we have court going on and all like that, it's just no place. We got people parking on the side of the road, we got people parking in the grass. That's our biggest issue.
I'm not saying eliminate the building you have now.
Right.
So you still have that parking now. And if I recall, and I didn't bring it with me, but the hub plan talked about increasing parking behind this building. So we'd have to look at that area again, Jody, and see if there's a way from that municipal hub plan to implement that parking plan sooner, along with this. And I can't envision all the spaces over there. So that's the one thing you'd have to look at.
I can't envision that either. That's why I'm bringing it up. I don't envision where you're talking about parking all these cars. That's my only big issue in that area. That's all I'm
I'm
saying.
envisioning using the, whatever spare cars you have, and whoever you put in the other building, that those cars would be there. I don't wanna create a situation where you're parking over there and you gotta walk a block to, that, I don't think that's safe.
Right.
But, so we'd have to solve the parking issue. Another way, when I was looking at this building, one of the ways that came to mind, make one of the, part of that building, an enclosed parking area.
So if I may, going into our space needs assessment and the square footage that would be necessary for a new police department, this would be grossly undersized. The footprint of this building would have to expand drastically. That's like a 7,000 square foot guesstimate on a footprint. We'd have to have 5 stories for that footprint to accommodate what is desired for our new police department.
So what in our needs assessment, how many square foot did we have for the police?
I want to say it was close to 40,000 square feet.
2,000, I think, is what it
Yeah.
was.
Right. So unfortunately, not only would we have a broken police department in that we'd have them spaced across the street from each other, our parking needs that we are presenting to you with our 102 Main Street rehabilitation area, even that is still underparked for all of what we're expecting the growth to accommodate. So the parking for 102 Main in that back part of our police department was really to accommodate our court and what the courts are bringing in regularly. So
So what are we envisioning to go in this 7,000 square?
I thought it would make a great EOC / fire headquarters because they are also outgrowing their EOC / the building across the street. And then if we have those other 5 tenants wanting to occupy that building, this is it just one idea, but this building could accommodate both staff and outside tenants. I mean, if you were to think of dividing it between floors, and the top floor is more for our staff, and the bottom floor is more for our chambers, Low Country Legal, the Bluffton Self-Help, our museum.
See, my problem, and this is why I'm trying, I'm struggling and why I came up with this idea. This is gonna cost millions of dollars. We already have a fire headquarters. It's gonna cost millions of dollars, take all those millions of dollars away from it, and we still haven't addressed the police department.
I wasn't prioritizing this over the police department, no.
So what are we
Right.
just gonna leave it?
Well, no, it would have to be, we have to get the vision of that space and that area, and then, of course, it gets put in the queue.
If I may, that building that you have there and the footprint of any building that we put there, we're gonna have to take into consideration. If we all remember what we went through with the Veterans Park and the enlargement of the drainage, if we start hard surfacing any more parking over there, where are we gonna go with the water? We have that issue already. And Chief, your people are parking on the grass there for a reason. I'd love to see hardscape there now, but we can't put it there. There is no place to put it. The footprint of this building is going to be even larger. Has that taken into consideration, the engineering of what are we gonna do with the water?
It would absolutely take into consideration the stormwater runoff, yes.
Okay. Secondly, we're going to, whatever we do, we're gonna be spending money belonging to the taxpayers. I have a real problem with spending money, taxpayer money, and not taking care of our own needs first before we look at, and I love them, I love the chamber, I love Low Country Legal. The idea of a museum, I like all of those ideas, but we have to take care of home first. If we need the space, if we're overcrowded here in City Hall or wherever we're at, we need to take care of our own needs first. If we have space available, that's fine. I would love a museum. That may be down the line if we have space available. But, rehabbing the existing building is throwing money away. Adding a second story to it, I don't think is right either. This design, yes, it is different. It does have some of the look of the rec center. I do like that. But the other buildings we have down there do not look like a traditional Southern building either. So, I mean, a lot of considerations to go through with this, but I don't think rehabbing an existing building is good use of money.
See, let me pick up on what you said. I favor option 3, and for all the reasons we said. I think Steve has put his finger on something. Our staff takes priority over outsiders. And we just need to stick with that. And I think Harry raises an excellent point. Our job ultimately is public safety. But I don't think we can jerry-rig the police department into this situation. That's a separate entity that we're going to have to do. It's got costs associated, but I don't think it can be an add-on to this. My personal opinion, I'm not an architect, and I think you have some additional advising coming back to us from what you heard. But I think the police department is a separate issue. It's an expensive issue. But public safety is at the top of our priority, and we need to do that. And I don't think we can blend these two together and have it come out the way we'd like it to. And so that's my input, but I like option 3, and I think it's a nice design. And I think it does kind of fit a little bit with the rec kind of design a little bit, so it's part of the family of looks that we have.
If I could, I'll give Annette a few minutes to talk about some of the conceptual ideas. And again, this is not something that's an absolute. It was an idea, and it was the directive that was given to her is try and bring something intentional and couple it in with what we want to see for our growth. Where do we want this municipal hub to go? So, Annette, take it away.
Thank you. Annette Lippert with Court Atkins. So we were asked to evaluate essentially the 3 options, and with option 3, again, knowing that the program that may end up in the building is a little fluid still, it was to present the idea of really addressing the corner of the lot versus coming in central on a symmetrical facade like you would in a lot that's maybe along the street, and then really having the idea of being very friendly to the public, a place where it's easily, having a high visibility. Again, what the program then is that goes inside, this was more about sharing the concept of a little bit grander entrance facing the corner, very public friendly, and then you can always sort of see how it gets modified with what program ends up being in the space, using some of the more modern architectural language that we are seeing in more recent buildings in the city with the growth. So again, it's a concept massing. It is not that we're saying, here's your final design by any means, but we wanted to purposely show different ideas to get some reactions, which has been great to hear. And happy to ask or answer any more questions that you may have on some of the other options or this one.
Well, I haven't spoken up yet, and I'm sure I'm in the minority, and that's okay. But this is everybody's thinking about space and whatever, but nobody's thinking about old residents of Hardeeville. This building's been here almost 50 years. We've lost the Haywood House, we've lost the Welch House, all the historic things, and we had talked about, and we had told Mike that we wanted to save this building if we possibly could. The old citizens of Hardeeville are losing, to all this modern stuff, and I've supported all the other things we've done. But y'all can outvote me if you want to, but I will not support tearing down that old building. The old citizens of Hardeeville that have made what we hear today need to have something that they can remember. And I'm sorry, I can be outvoted, and that's fine, but I'll go down and I can say that I supported keeping that building. Now, Harry had mentioned something a while ago, the concept that when Mayor Cannon was here, when they tore this building down, this was a school. I went to school here. But when they rebuilt this building, they kept the print. The same bricks are here, the same designs here. Matter of fact, this is the auditorium. You heard the guy the other day. This is the auditorium when I was a little boy. So the prints here, the bricks here, even the original sign up there is here. And Harry mentioned something about saving the shell and then doing something else. I might go along with that, but I will not, and y'all can vote 4-1 but I will not support tearing that building down. Because I don't think it's
Won't
fair
go
to
down 4-1, it'll go down 3-2.
All right, 3, because I will not support, Mike, I'm not gonna support,
on that one too, John.
I'm not gonna support them, another old building from Hardyville.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, and John, this is why we're here.
But everybody's leaning toward 3 and all this modern stuff.
All this is here
We haven't
is,
made a
again,
final vote.
Well, you said you wanted that.
I favor that, but
Well, I don't.
I heard what you said.
I don't favor.
so John, again, this is a decision that the council needs to make, historical.
Let's have one conversation, please.
John, this is a decision the council needs to make. You're right, history, sentiment versus other factors, cost of rehabilitation, space needs of the city, parking, all those, this is what the council needs to decide. So we don't need to go into how big that building's gonna be, who's gonna go in there, who's gonna cost. What we really need the council to say is, are we keeping the existing structure in some fashion? Or are we tearing it down, or are we renovating it at? That's what we need to know. We don't need to go into, all that down the road, because you guys are gonna be totally involved in it, but that's the decision that we really need to make.
Well, that's
We
my
tried to point all that out. So we weren't, John, again, we were giving you the facts. You guys determined.
And you and I've talked a little bit about it.
I agree.
And if I may jump in, I know I kind of focused on option 3, and I'm clearly not aware of the full history of the building, but I've heard about there's a former jail component, and just walking the building, one can see various additions. You see exterior walls that have become interior walls. You see at least 2 different bricks on the building from former additions and renovations that have been done to the building. So there is already a lot of blending in the existing structure, and I can certainly appreciate wanting to maintain a history and how one references that history, or how that gets transitioned. I think those are all things that obviously want to be factored in. There are some just even code challenges with the existing building. And as you heard Jody already mentioning, just a partial demolition is always rather risky. Contractors don't love them because you don't know how intact you're going to be able to keep something. So those are just risks to be aware of. So even if you chose to keep the shell, there is a risk that it doesn't demolish as cleanly as you hope. That's in part why some of those numbers get driven up. And they are risks that you can't completely confirm that it's going to come down cleanly to take the interior and do the structural retrofits, even on a single story renovation. So those are just factors to be aware of. And certainly, these were conceptual in nature, so we're completely aware that there's going to be more conversations on details. And again, I'm happy to answer more specifics if people have any questions.
I have another question. John makes an excellent point, and there's a lot to be respected with the tradition of Hardyville, and I agree that his points are well taken. My question is, with a contractor doing not a demolition in a new building, but the add-on and this kind of thing, I'm getting the impression, if I'm hearing it correctly, that that's a much more risky job to take on because of all the unknowns, et cetera, and the possibility of cost overruns or et cetera, or just not being able to do what we want. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because that gives us the option, not doing 3, but the risk factor and the attractiveness of that project for a contractor, just
Right.
your guess, not.
Absolutely.
You need to do more, but what's your.
Yeah. I mean, most definitely, you're going to have to account for a much higher contingency. So the contingencies, and again, I don't know, sometimes I get lost in the vernacular or the vocabulary of architecture. So the contingency being money that you haven't specifically assigned to, we know windows are going to cost this. We know the contingency being money that you're allocating for the unforeseen. As soon as you do a renovation, there's always unforeseen. It could start with things like you do a slab cut to put in new plumbing and you realize that the slab really isn't as thick as you anticipated it being. So now you're finding that your slab isn't structurally as sound as you anticipated. It was built under a much earlier code. Codes tend to get more and more stringent. Again, it's all about public safety. Health and life safety is our highest decree when we're designing, and that's what the building code does. So those are all aspects of where you would have to retrofit, and how you do those retrofits becomes very challenging. And that's where, yes, I think a contractor is going to put a much bigger margin on starting on a project, because they may also find, okay, if I start demoing and more comes down than I anticipated, it takes more time to very carefully do the demolition. It takes a lot of time to try to retrofit in the structural modifications to bring it up to present day code. And so starting clean in that sense is much easier for a contractor to know what they're getting into.
My guess, from my past experience in the corporate world, when we did things similar to this, and just drawing on that, I could see that this has the potential of a 25% to one-third cost issue that could come about as a result of this. And I don't think that that's a liberal number. I think that's a conservative, just from my past experience. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it means that we need to understand that that can be a real factor.
Something to think about. John, you have a very good point. This building alone is an idea of this. What is the possibility, because they do it quite often in other historical areas, they save the facade of the building as much as they can and build backwards. We need the space. And I appreciate what you're saying, John, but this is also, we need the space, not just the building, we need the space. Could we save the facade of the building and try to keep as much of the original look that is currently there and build backwards? How much can we build and we're not gonna jeopardize
Steve,
our drainage?
I was thinking something along the concept of this building.
Uh-huh.
This building is the exact footprint of what the old school was.
Yeah.
Same bricks, whatever. Why couldn't that be done with that building?
Well, that's what I'm saying, if we could use the existing bricks and the existing facade,
That's
but
right.
gain space off the backside. So somebody's looking at the front of that building is gonna see the same
That's
building
exactly right.
then that they're seeing today.
Yeah.
The back of the building go further back.
That's right.
One of the things that I want to point out is this portico, why it was being replaced is because it's rotted. So really trying to save this would be a rebuild.
Well, then that would be a rebuild, but I get where John's coming from, and I think it's an idea worth exploring. Savannah has done it with many of their older buildings. Where I came from, a town called Galena, their main street looks the same as it did 150 years ago, because they made them save all of the facades. Everything behind that facade is new. Could we do something like that?
Or, like we did with this building was raised and they built it back in the same footprint. Could you do that?
With the same brick?
And same exterior?
I have a hard time believing that we can salvage the brick just
Well,
because
no,
it's,
even-
yeah,
well-
it's already crumbling. I mean, it's not,
But could
to
we keep,
preserve it and paint it was a way to keep it intact.
could we keep the same design of the existing building?
That's
I think, John, I think that's where you're
And
looking
you and
at.
I.
They look at the front of that building and we want it to look, it could be a brand new brick, everything else.
as long as that's exactly
As long as
right.
it looks the
That
same.
same
We
shape and
expand out the
design.
back, we accomplish the looks of the building, and we accomplish our
I
space
didn't mean
needs.
literally necessarily that you use the same brick, but I mean that design.
Same
Like,
color.
just like
Same
Steve said, when
facade.
you drive down Main Street or, whatever,
And
it looks just like it does now.
And I mean, looking at the space needs, I think will in part inform some of those decisions, because if you're keeping that front facade, you're probably not going 2 stories, so you may need to keep,
Go back, sure.
right, so you just need a lot more footprint. So it's just a matter of then balancing that with some of the other constraints of, we're already having stormwater issues, not enough parking, and if we're keeping it single story. And again, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm merely saying some of the other factors to keep in mind is if we're going backwards, we're creating more impervious area. So we are going to have to look at the stormwater and the parking issue in another way. Again, lots of creative solutions that can address things. But those on then the global view of the project will need to factor in.
Jody, you've heard a lot of feedback, and we have John's position, which is a great one. We have also what Steve doing. It seems to me that rather than continuing on, we need some more homework done by you folks and cost and this and that, is another look at this based on the fact you've gotten a lot of new information, some of which would be a change in your direction, I would think, or at least a second look at some of what's been raised this morning.
I think when you're asking about a facade that's similar or keeping something that makes this recognizable, I mean, we have setback requirements here, so we wouldn't really be changing anything from this front. We have some space here that could be utilized, but of course with the master plan, I don't want to speak out of turn and say that this is already allocated. If we were to try and keep something on the front, but then push out to the side, even along the back with what was shown for some of the drive lanes and the additional parking, we really don't have room to go out the back other than remove all of this and keep some portion of it looking like it's original. But that drives the cost even higher. I mean, now we're taking an existing slab and we're cutting half of it. It gets very delicate, and I may not even get a contractor bid on the job. I mean, that's the other portion that restoration contractors, having a scope like that, they either focus on something that's existing and stays within that footprint, or they're new developers and they want to build all new. So I'd be trying to marry a contractor that can do both, and that's a very specialized thing. So
Well, I think that what John's saying, and I support him 100%. You can, if the best way is to demolish the building, but build the front exactly same color brick, same dimensions, same everything as it is now.
Yeah.
But I think in order for you to design something, whether you go to the back or the side, I think we first have to decide what we're gonna do with the building. You know,
the use.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because, okay, now
Agreed.
we're giving you direction, that it's gonna be 1 story. It's gonna look exactly the same in the front, those big trees that look, it's gonna stay there. Now, you may be able to go out back, but what are we gonna use it for? It's not big enough area for a police department. It's not big enough area for a city hall. We already got city hall people all over the place, you know, staff. We have it in the public works, we have it, you know, we just bought buildings next to here. We have here, you know, we have all over the place. So this doesn't solve the space needs of staff.
Correct.
So we still have to build a fire department, or not fire, police department, and solve the city hall space needs. So that being said, I would just make this building pretty much the same footprint, use it, and contrary to Steve, use it for other services and whatever, but we have to first decide what that is. So you need to know how big a place to
That-
design.
That's a very good point, because it's really hard to even come up with some concepts for you without knowing what the square footage requirements are.
What you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, what the square footage requirements were for the tenants that were in there, we exceeded those quickly. Now, can we dictate who gets how much, or, yes, of course, I just don't have that parameter.
So Mike, if we did this, keeping approximately the square footage, maybe we can add some at the back, whatever, than it is now. What do you recommend we use it for?
Well, I'm not sure we're at that point, Harry. I guess, first, two things. One, Val hasn't spoken, I don't know where she's leaning. And then secondly, I think we've got direction where we can come back within a relatively short period of time, answer your questions and concerns. Can we save it? How big can it be? And then we'll come back with, here's the options. Here's the people we can put in there. Here's the function.
Or tear it down and.
That's right,
But rebuild it
exactly.
like they did this building.
Exactly,
Yeah.
John. But I think if we hear from Val, I think we got directions. We can, within a couple of weeks, we'll come back and try to answer all those questions that Bo and John brought.
Yep, because if I may, in this initial round of the study, we were really just almost isolated looking at the building and its options, and not so much yet at the, well, we were aware of the parking and all, and stormwater, but hadn't done, all the detailed implications of, let's say, a significantly larger footprint, for instance, because, so there's more of a site analysis that we would have, component that we would need to do on that, and it's sounding like that may be the next step. Just this first round was really very much about three different conceptual approaches for the building, again, not knowing the program, so just the idea of existing as is with really very minimal change, except for some code required changes. The next one, providing more space while maintaining as much as possible. And then the third being really the idea of, all right, we're creating space that will really be able to address the programmatic needs of whatever department. Because again, that's why they're really sort of at this point shells. Because yes, the program really needs to, and the program will also need to influence the architecture as far as what the needs of those spaces are. How much is it public meeting spaces? How much is it office spaces? How much is it? And that will drive some of the architectural decisions.
One of the things I want to point out, though, is this will not change. Your $200 to $225 a square foot for renovation, if that's the route we go, you have that information. That's as close as I can get to market. $450 to $500 for renovating and keeping this first level, and then for a new build, $400 to $450, and we can't get out of that range. I don't care really what it looks like. Those numbers are going to be consistent. So finding the use and maybe modifying the interior layout a little bit is still going to be within all of these ranges. But
Not to interrupt, we have 2,600 square foot, one level there. We jump over to 7,000 square feet there, so 3,500 per. So you're adding 900 square foot to the initial footprint?
yeah,
for the
if you can
building?
see here where this void is, where there is no building, we squared it off.
Could you bring that back with the next time we talk?
I'm sorry?
Bring that building, the existing building up to 3,500 square feet. You're off the back side of it. We gain a little bit of space that could be desperately
You mean
used.
here, just squaring this off?
Yes, I think that would be an idea. Something to remember too is we still have another building we have yet to decide the use
If you
for.
read my mind, still got the Carroll
I mean-
property and stuff that we hadn't, what is that property gonna
If
be?
we added 900 square feet to this building, could we put in what's existing in there now and use it for our media department and everybody else? But at 500 and, at $225 per square foot. So we're gonna add basically what,
Well, you're to add 900 square feet, it wouldn't be within this price point. This is a
No.
renovation price point, so you're going up to, for that 900 square feet, you're gonna have to go into this range, somewhere in the
Okay.
450 range. So that,
okay.
quick math, I mean, it's a lot of money. It's gonna change that 585 very quickly. You're gonna be over 600.
Could you bring both options though when we,
Sure,
the next
yeah,
time?
we could
Thank
do
you.
that, yeah.
Al, do you have any thoughts?
No, I support John because when we went from the picture before this one to that, it broke my heart
Yeah,
because
me
it's
too.
like, I just sat there in shock because I'm like, we're eradicating history.
That's right.
And if we are going to be a cultural tour, if we're going to promote cultural tourism in here, this is not the way to do it, because little by little,
Yep.
we are eradicating the history of what makes Hardyville.
Exactly right.
And we have to include that
Sort
in
of
here.
adapted to the rec center though, didn't you?
Oh, look just like it. Tears down history.
Move on.
So, to wrap up, I think the sentiment is that we want to, we suggest a couple things. First of all, we need to know what you would like to put in there. Okay, number two, we support tearing down, but rebuilding to make it look exactly what it is today. Up front, exactly the same, okay? You don't stop me, people, if I'm not summarizing properly. And then, we want a couple of options of sticking with 2,600 square feet or adding 900, to making it 3,500 square feet. Can we do it, what it means out back, but most importantly, if it's 3,500 or if it's 2,600, what will we put in there?
And absolutely, and Harry will also add 102 Main. I mean, and we need to look at the hub.
That's a good point.
So, you know,
Maybe you
we
look
should
at
have
them
kind of a
together.
plan. 102 Main, this is the function. You know, whatever the, I don't know, let's see, whatever that address is, that's function. So yeah, we'll have that in a couple of weeks.
Very close together. That's a good point,
That's
Mike.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Anything else?
I think we got it. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Can I add one more thing? I think that you don't wanna, you always have to go back to the old saying. You're not gonna get to the finish line until you take the first step. I think we have to take the first step and get serious about what we're gonna do for the police department headquarters.
100%.
And, not keep kicking the can down the road.
Band-Aid.
Band-Aid here, we've put a couple of $1 million worth of Band-Aids, and we still have the problem of coming up with a 40,000 square feet building. And until we identify where it's gonna go, how we're gonna cost, do we have to set money aside for a couple of years? But we have to start developing a plan so we can get to the finish line on that building.
Chief agrees.
And the same thing can be decided here. We've talked about a lot of options on the space for City Hall.
Yeah.
But we've never said, okay, how are we gonna get there? What do we need? How are we gonna get there? Do we have to put aside, $1 million a year for each of them for a couple of years? And do we have to bond it? But let's stop talking about it and let's get a plan and put money to it in the budget.
Good point.
I agree with you.
All right, well, let's roll on to the next thing. We'll spend some time.
It's never gonna get done if we don't
Right,
start.
and, yeah, it keeps you.
No, let's go ahead. We'll go for a while.
Or Chief, would you rather wait a few years before we start?
I get a motion. I noticed somewhere you threw me to the wolves for that glass building.
My hair's turning gray and falling out faster than ever. When you get yourself back to. All right, Mr. Davis, we'll spend some time, we have Dylan Turner here to present kind of the overall plan. We're gonna get into some traffic mitigation memos, but why don't we spend the next hour and then we've got lunch and then we'll try to wrap that up. And I know the council want to do something else at the end, so. All right, go ahead, Mr. Well, whatever, some amount of time, man, come on, proceed.
I'm out of here.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It is your favorite non-traffic guy talking to you about traffic, but I did bring some backup. So anyway, yeah, so this is a continuation of a conversation we've been having for probably over a year now, but I kind of started at the beginning. So as you know, we had another developer from another project. We were able to negotiate some funding to do a corridor study on US 278 that goes from US 17 to Argent Boulevard. Other entities had studied 278 basically from Argent Boulevard the whole way to Hilton Head, and obviously this part of 278 impacts us as well as those folks. But anyway, so we had contracted with Kimberly Horn to do that study, and that was more of it was certainly a holistic view, but in somewhat it was more general. Just hey, West Argent has this many potential homes, Morgan Tract, South Point, etc. But as time went on, these developments started to happen and develop, and we were talking with developers and engineers and what they were specifically going to look like. So we took a deeper dive. One of the things we did was we have had another third party, Stantec, do an independent review of all the TIAs, the traffic impact analyses of these various developments. And then they've worked closely with Kimberly Horn to look at the proposed plans for these various developments, as I mentioned, and try to come up with a long-term plan to move forward and to give you all some comfort that we're working on a long-term plan to solve some of these problems. Obviously, 278 itself is the elephant in the room. We are not going to solve that problem by ourselves, but there are things that can be done in the meantime while we wait for that to occur, hopefully, probably with the transportation sales tax and many other sources of funding as well. But so what we've done is we have worked through it. Kimberly Horn has worked through, and what they've developed is what we're calling responsibility memos that last week were distributed to the Morgan Tract, West Argent, and South Point, spelling out various mitigation measures that they would have to take looking long term. And we're still working through that with them. They had some questions and needed some clarifications, maybe who pays for what or a share of something, and that's all things we're going to work out. But that's where we are right now, and that's what we're trying to do, again, to get everyone on the same page. Mr. Simborn and I and Dylan actually had a call 2 weeks ago with SCDOT, and they really are kind of limited in what they can look at. They can't look as comprehensively as we can. So while something may get, SCDOT approval, you all may not have a level of comfort because we haven't looked deep enough. So we're doing that deep dive and trying to give you, again, that level of comfort that we have a plan and a process in place so these folks can continue to move forward, because obviously we're still, several years away from any homes actually being built. So we want to get the ball rolling. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Dylan and let him go through his presentation unless you have any questions of me.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. It's all you, Dylan.
Yep. All right, so Dylan Turner with Kimberly Horn. Great introduction there from Matt. So you're just going to go over our corridor study, kind of what we've done as far as we're going to look at 278 first, and then we're going to go into the individual intersections that we looked at as well. And then we're going to hit some high notes on some of the traffic studies that have been done or currently being done, because there's a lot of, everybody that is looking at this corridor are really, really, really good traffic engineers with a lot of history in this area. And so we're right now working through some of the stuff because we gave, as Matt said, some of the responsibility memos over to 3 developments, which were West Argent, South Point, and Morgan Tract. And that's the ones that are more focused right at the I-95 interchange in 278. So this is just an overall study area map. So we looked at 9 intersections, started at US 17, White Hardy Boulevard, ended over at Argent. Here's what we found. So currently, White Hardy Boulevard. So if you see the green and yellow aren't the worst. Obviously, red are a failing intersection. So Argent. So if I start to the right, Argent fails, Automobile Boulevard fails, John Smith fails, and then the I-95 ramps going northbound fail. That's that long northbound queue that you see getting off from Savannah to 278 that you have today. So this is our crash history. So no real surprises here.